Her phone lit up again. I counted the vibrations. 1, 2, pause, 3. Same rhythm as the last 6. Like a code. Like whoever was messaging her knew she was trying to hide. She didn't look at me when it buzzed. She just took a slow sip from her cup, one hand around the lid, the other gently touching the screen like she was afraid it might explode. I didn't say anything. I just watched. The cafe was half empty, jazz music dribbling out of hidden speakers, and her laugh still echoing faintly in my ears. Not because she laughed with me, but because she hadn't stopped laughing since he walked in. The man. He was standing by the sugar counter now, stirring his coffee like he had all the time in the world. Perfect hair, slim watch, beige coat that probably cost more than my laptop. And he knew her name. He'd said it in a way I hadn't heard in months. Like he owned it. I shifted in my chair, still holding her bag. She'd handed it to me without thinking when we came in. Like I was her assistant. Her valet, not her husband. I tried to remember when exactly that had changed. When my name in her mouth became flat. When she stopped checking if I'd had lunch. When she started locking her phone screen with her hand tilted toward the wall. And then it hit me. The laugh. That was the shift. I hadn't heard that laugh in our house in over a year. Be right back, she said suddenly, already grabbing the phone and rising to her feet. Where are you going? She blinked. Like the question surprised her. To grab sugar, she mumbled. She didn't even take her coffee. I watched her walk straight past the counter, straight past the sugar station, straight to him. She tapped his elbow, leaned in close, and whispered something. His eyebrows twitched. Then he nodded, and she laughed again. A full, open laugh. Head tilted back, hand brushing his arm lightly. I felt my ears ringing. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the tile, making a few heads turn. She did not. She forgot I was there. Forgot I was her husband. She only turned around when I said her name. Not the sweet version. Not Mal. I said the full name. Mallory. She froze. Her eyes darted to me like I'd walked into the wrong room. Then she smiled. Like I was just a familiar face from high school she couldn't place. Oh, hey, what are you doing here? I didn't answer. Because something in my stomach told me the real question was, what had she been doing here, every Thursday for the past 3 months? She didn't sit back down. Not right away. Mallory just stood there next to him, holding her phone like a fragile egg, and tapping the screen with rapid, nervous fingers. I watched her shoulders twitch slightly with each message sent. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in a way you'd only catch if you were looking for it. And I was. Every detail now felt like evidence. Clues. A way to understand what the hell was happening right in front of me. I thought she'd come back to the table after whispering to him. Maybe laugh it off, give me some weak excuse, make it awkward for a minute or two. We'd leave. She'd promised to explain later. But she didn't. Instead, he leaned in again. His hand rested on the edge of the table, her side of it, and she didn't pull away. She didn't recoil, didn't flinch, didn't even glance at me. Like I was a ghost sitting 2 tables over. I took my phone out of my pocket, hands shaking just enough to fumble the password the first time. I opened our shared calendar app. We'd had this set up since our 3rd year of marriage. Color-coded blocks for meetings, appointments, anything that might affect each other's schedules. I found today's date. There it was. A neat little blue box from 11 to 12 o'clock. Vendor Q&A/R&D rep, conference room B. I looked back up. We were not in conference room B. And this guy? He was not wearing a badge. Now I was staring. I didn't care. I wanted her to feel it. Feel the weight of my eyes. Remember, I was still there, still holding the gloves I had brought like an idiot. But Mallory didn't give me that satisfaction. She finally turned, finally met my eyes, and offered this shallow smile. Not guilty, not warm. Just polite. We should head back, she said, as if nothing was wrong. As if we were all on the same page. I'll see you upstairs, she added to him, before turning back toward me. I didn't move. Who is he? I asked, voice lower than I meant it to be. Almost whispering, like I was afraid of my own question. She paused. Just someone I work with. She lied. I saw it immediately. I know her voice, every notch of it, every version of her fake. And that one, that was her parking ticket voice. The one she used with meter readers or mall security. Calm, controlled, full of practiced innocence. Right, I said. Just someone who has meetings with you off calendar. In coffee shops. Without a badge. Mallory rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. Like I was being the difficult one. Like I had broken something sacred by asking. "You're overthinking it, Ellis." God, the way she said my name. Like I was some clingy intern bothering her on a lunch break. She grabbed her coat and turned to leave. I followed. I didn't want to make a scene. Not in public. Not yet. But something told me, deep in my chest, that whatever this was, it wasn't new. It wasn't spontaneous. This had history, and I was late to the story. As we stepped outside into the cold, she glanced at her phone again, then quickly stuffed it into her pocket. I noticed her thumb trembling just a little before it disappeared under the wool. We didn't speak the whole walk to the car, but in my head, the questions were already boiling. Who was he really? Why the lies? And what else had she hidden beneath that laugh? The thing about silence in a car is that it's never just silence. It's pressure. It's volume turned inside out. You start hearing things that aren't there, like the ticking of the dashboard clock, or your own pulse pounding in your ears like someone knocking on a locked door. That was the sound between us on the drive home. Mallory scrolled through her phone the entire time. Every red light, every turn. I watched her from the corner of my eye, pretending to check the side mirror. Her screen flashed Messenger once, then quickly jumped to Instagram. At one point, she typed something and then deleted it before hitting send. She didn't look up once. When we pulled into the driveway, she got out before the engine even fully shut off. I sat there for a moment, watching her keys jingle as she walked inside like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just seen her whisper to some stranger in a beige coat with the kind of intimacy reserved for old lovers or very new ones. I stayed behind in the car with my hands still on the wheel, trying to make sense of how fast the ground had shifted beneath me. That night, she was oddly affectionate. She made my favorite pasta, the one with the roasted garlic and that weird cheese she hates buying because it makes the fridge smell. She poured wine. She even lit a candle, which we hadn't done in months. It would have felt romantic if I hadn't seen her hand shaking slightly as she refilled my glass. "Long day?" she asked. I stared at her for a second too long. "Sure." She smiled and nodded, like we'd just settled something. We didn't talk about the coffee shop. We didn't talk about him. But the air between us was different now. Not tense, worse. It was artificial. Everything felt rehearsed. Her laugh was too tight. Her touches were placed with surgical precision, as if to say, "See? Everything's fine." When she went to bed, she left her phone on the nightstand, face down. But I'd seen that before. I knew her patterns. And that's when I realized something I had never noticed in all our years together. Mallory never let her phone battery drop below 50%. I waited, sat in the dark living room with the TV on mute, pretending to be half asleep while she scrolled through TikTok upstairs. Around 1:14 a.m., I heard her breathing shift into that fake rhythm, the kind she uses when she wants me to think she's asleep. I moved silently, still barefoot from earlier, and crept up the stairs. Her screen was dark, locked. I knew her passcode. She didn't know I did. She changed it 3 months ago, but she forgot she typed it in front of a mirror once. I memorized it out of pure habit, not because I ever intended to use it. But I used it now. Phone unlocked. Screen bright. My heart beating like it was trying to escape my chest. I didn't even go to messages first. I went to Safari. Nobody ever thinks to check Safari. And there it was. Signs your husband suspects you. How to delete Messenger conversations permanently. Can deleted location history be recovered? Business hotels in Greystone under $200. I stopped breathing. Greystone was an hour away. She didn't have any meetings scheduled there. Hell, we hadn't been there since our anniversary dinner 2 years ago. I scrolled further. The tabs were still open. She hadn't even cleared them. Can you get pregnant if? That one stopped me cold. She hadn't said a word about wanting kids for over a year. Every time I brought it up, she brushed it off with "not the right time" or "works insane right now." So what the hell was she doing Googling pregnancy questions on a private tab? And then, I saw the email. She'd left her Gmail open in another tab. Rookie mistake. I clicked it. The top message was labeled Set Night Plans kiss mark. No name. Just a reply. I tapped it. The body of the email was short. One sentence. I can't stop thinking about the elevator. Same time next week. There was a photo attachment. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because the subject line had already ripped something out of me I wasn't sure I could ever get back. I locked the phone, placed it exactly where I found it, and walked out of the room. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the kitchen, replaying every laugh, every kiss, every "I love you," wondering which parts were real and how long ago they stopped being. I woke up to the sound of the garbage truck backing up outside, but I hadn't really been asleep. Just lying there, blinking into the ceiling, feeling like my body was heavy and hollow at the same time. Mallory was already gone. Her side of the bed was cold, perfectly made, not a wrinkle in the comforter. It was like she had never been there at all. I went through the motions, made coffee, let it go cold, opened my laptop, stared at emails without reading them. But I couldn't stop thinking about the email. The subject line, that kiss emoji, the hotel location in Greystone. I didn't want to become one of those guys who snoops, who spirals, who becomes paranoid and obsessive. But then again, I also never thought I'd be married to someone who was deleting messages in the middle of the night while laughing with another man during fake work meetings. So here we were. Around noon, she texted me a selfie, bright, glowing, her hair styled differently than it had been when she left the house. I stared at it for a solid minute before noticing the detail that made my chest tighten. Behind her, on the wall in the background, there was a piece of abstract art. Ugly, brown and gray, like a muddy Rorschach test. I recognized it immediately, not because we had one like it, but because I'd seen it before. 3 months ago, my boss took the entire team to Greystone for a weekend training seminar. We stayed at a hotel called the Courtyard Tower, a business-class place off the freeway with cheap coffee and elevators that smelled like carpet cleaner. That ugly abstract painting was in the hallway right outside room 614. I remember it because I had stared at it every time I waited for the elevator. And now it was in the background of my wife's selfie. I zoomed in to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Same painting, same weird gold frame with the scuffed corner. I checked the timestamp. 11:42 a.m. Her calendar said she was in a board alignment session across town. I didn't reply. Instead, I got in my car and started driving. I wasn't sure what I'd do when I got there. I had no plan, no justification, just this deep need to see it for myself. To know I wasn't inventing this. The hotel looked exactly as I remembered it. Slightly faded signage, lobby filled with the smell of burnt coffee and lemon-scented floor wax. I walked slowly through the corridor, past the front desk, my heart pounding louder with each step. Then I saw it. The painting, the frame, the exact same hallway from her selfie. My throat dried up. I glanced toward room 614. The door was closed. A little electronic lock glowing green for a second as a maid exited, pushing a cart. I caught the glimpse of an unmade bed, 2 glasses on the nightstand, a tie hanging from the closet handle. No signs of her. She was already gone. I turned around and walked back toward the lobby. But before I could leave, something made me stop. Something stupid. Something small. A half-folded receipt sitting on the front counter of the gift shop near the entrance. The receipt had a lipstick mark across the top. The clerk was chatting with someone, so I pretended to browse postcards while my eyes scanned it. I caught the timestamp, 11:09 a.m. The item? 1 bottle of wine, 1 travel-size mouthwash, 1 men's deodorant, and the name printed across the bottom? M. Kavanaugh. My wife's last name. She didn't even use an alias. I drove home in a fog. Not angry, not devastated, just numb. The kind of numb that makes your hands go cold on the steering wheel. I kept thinking about the painting. That abstract smear of colors hanging in the hallway like it was trying to say something. It felt like a metaphor I didn't want to understand. When I got home, Mallory was in the kitchen sautéing mushrooms like it was a normal Tuesday. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I liked the photo she'd sent. I told her I hadn't had time to look at it. She smiled, said she understood. Then she turned back to the stove and started humming a song I didn't recognize. Something upbeat, carefree. Meanwhile, my brain was doing math. 1 wine, 1 deodorant, 2 glasses, and a photo she took in a hallway outside a hotel room she wasn't supposed to be in. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't emotional confusion. This was premeditated. And I finally realized something that chilled me more than any hotel receipt or deleted text ever could. Mallory wasn't slipping away. She was already gone. There are moments when your body keeps going long after your brain has stopped. That was me the next morning, brushing my teeth, putting on socks, walking to my car, answering emails. All while my mind just stood still, staring into that hotel hallway. Every action I took felt like an impersonation of who I used to be. Mallory was already gone by the time I got up. Left early for back-to-back strategy sessions downtown. She left a sticky note on the fridge with a smiley face. That part hurt the most for some reason. Like she thought all I needed to keep going was a crooked little yellow circle on a square of paper. As if lies shrink when you smile enough. I stood in the kitchen for a while, just staring at that note. Then, almost without thinking, I opened the drawer where we keep expired coupons, rubber bands, and forgotten things. I dug through it and found what I was looking for, the old keys. See, years ago, back when Mallory still brought home souvenirs from places instead of receipts soaked in betrayal, she started collecting hotel key cards. Called them postcards from nowhere. She thought it was quirky. I'd find them tucked in books or taped to the inside of her closet door, labeled with dates and little notes in pen. And she never threw them away. I headed to the guest room closet and started digging. They were all still there. Dozens of key cards from cities we'd visited, hotels from work trips, even one from the cheap roadside motel we'd crashed at during a storm when our car broke down. Each one had a piece of tape with her handwriting. Chicago launch. Your cousin's wedding. That weekend we got too drunk in Palm Springs. But then I saw one that didn't belong. It had no tape, no handwriting, just a single, unmarked black key card tucked behind a cosmetics bag in the bottom of an old shoebox. I flipped it over. There was a faint scratch on the back, a line almost like an accidental initial, or maybe just damage from overuse. It looked exactly like the ones from the Courtyard Tower in Greystone. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a keepsake. This was a souvenir she hid from herself. That's when something shifted in me. Not rage. Not revenge. Something colder. Cleaner. I'd spent weeks, months, probably, drowning in confusion, begging for crumbs of truth, catching glimpses of a different life playing out behind my back. But now I had something she didn't know I had. I had time. I had patience. And I had curiosity. She wanted to live a double life? Fine. I'd watch. I'd take notes. I'd learn the rules of the game. She thought I was too soft to play. I started by checking our shared credit card account. Nothing unusual. She was careful. But the hotel receipt hadn't shown up yet, which meant she probably used her personal card. I couldn't access that, but I remembered the app she used for rewards points. She always used it on hotel stays, even personal ones, because she liked free upgrades. And she never logged out of anything. I opened her laptop. No password prompt. Idiotically confident. I launched the rewards app. Her account was still signed in. I scrolled through past bookings. Most of them were old, legitimate business trips. But then I saw it. 2 reservations under her name at Courtyard Tower. One from a month ago. One from yesterday. Both for room 614. And there it was. The confirmation email, sitting quietly in her inbox with the subject line. Welcome back to Courtyard Tower. We've saved your preferences. I clicked into the email. Her preferences were listed at the bottom. King bed. Late checkout. Extra pillows. No housekeeping. I don't know why, but the no housekeeping part made my stomach churn. Like she wanted to make sure no one else saw what went on behind that door. I closed the laptop slowly and sat back. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't one emotional slip or a rough patch or unresolved issues from therapy. This was a system. A well-oiled, well-rehearsed, fully lived-in second life she had built with another man. And I was just the scenery. I could have confronted her right then. Thrown the laptop across the room, screamed, demanded answers. But she would have lied. She would have cried. She would have turned the spotlight on me, made it about my tone, my invasion of privacy, my jealousy. So instead, I smiled. Because now I knew something she didn't. And that changed everything. There's a strange comfort in pretending everything is normal, even when you know it's not. I made us breakfast the next morning, scrambled eggs with green onions, sourdough toast, the kind of meal you make when you're trying too hard. Mallory came downstairs in one of my hoodies, yawning like she hadn't slept much, and kissed me on the forehead, as if that tiny gesture still had value. She talked about some client call she had later. I nodded, smiled, asked if she wanted coffee. She said yes with cream, like always, and told me I was sweet. But I wasn't listening to her voice anymore. I was studying her words, parsing the spaces between them, measuring the pauses, watching for glitches in her story. The thing about liars, good ones, long-term ones, is they learn to recycle sentences. They stick to phrases that have worked before. I noticed she kept calling her coworkers the team, now, never by name. She used to tell me about Cassie, about Mark, about that new hire she found annoying. Now it was always just the team. Less risk, less evidence. After she left, I waited 5 full minutes before I moved. Just enough time for her to get in the car, start driving, settle into her rhythm. Then I went back upstairs, opened her laptop again, and went deeper. I knew she had a second Facebook account. She made it years ago when she was freelancing for a campaign that required her to run ads. She never deleted it. I remember because it was tied to an old email she still used for subscriptions. When I logged into that account, I wasn't prepared for what I found. The account was still active, but private. No profile photo. No timeline posts. Nothing that screamed life. But the Messenger tab, that was where the color lived. I clicked it open. There was only one thread pinned to the top, muted. No name, just a lowercase j. The chat went back months. Hundreds of messages. Deleted photos. Vanished voice memos. But enough left behind to paint the full, ugly mural. The language between them was coded but familiar, full of inside jokes, half-sentences, winks buried in periods, and hotel references. So many of them. 614 tomorrow? I'll leave the key behind the ice machine again. Same elevator trick as last time. Winking face. Telly, you're on a client call. My stomach clenched at that. I didn't need to ask who he was. I didn't need to decode what the elevator trick meant. Every word was acid in my veins, slowly corroding the last fibers of trust one had left. But what broke me wasn't the content. It was the tone. The thread didn't read like an affair. It read like a life. A full, private, emotionally complete relationship. There were complaints about me. Yes, but they were shallow, almost lazy. What stood out were the details she gave him. Her favorite childhood movie. The name of her first pet. Her dreams about opening a bookshop. Things she hadn't told me in years. Somewhere along the way, I had become the placeholder. The tax filing partner. The shared Wi-Fi plan. And Jay? He had become the real-life version of who she was with when she wasn't trying to protect the lie. I didn't even notice my hands shaking until I tried to take a screenshot and nearly dropped the laptop. I wanted to close the window. Walk away. Pretend I hadn't seen any of it. But then, buried deep in the thread, 9 weeks ago, timestamped 2:47 a.m. I found the sentence that rewired something in me forever. He doesn't suspect a thing. I actually forgot he was my husband at the cafe last week, LOL, grinning face with sweat, like, fully forgot. I stopped reading. Forgot. She forgot. Not faked. Not pretended. Not evaded. She actually forgot. For her, I had become so far removed from her emotional reality that, in a public space, for a moment, I had ceased to even exist as her partner. I was just background noise. An extra in a scene she wasn't planning to shoot. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark room, blinds still drawn, the world outside moving without me. I couldn't cry, couldn't scream. I didn't even feel betrayed anymore. I just felt erased, like I'd been photoshopped out of my own marriage, and the edit was so clean no one would notice I'd ever been there. The worst part? I wasn't even sure she'd care if I confronted her. She might apologize. She might cry. She might even be sorry. But not because she missed me. Because she'd missed the convenience of who I'd become. It's strange how quickly grief becomes routine. By the time the weekend arrived, I had already gotten used to it. The rhythm of pretending everything was fine, of smiling when she spoke, of answering questions like I hadn't been reading her private life through the glow of a laptop screen for days. There was a rhythm to it now, like putting on clothes that no longer fit, but you're too cold to care. Mallory suggested a hike that Saturday. Said we needed fresh air. Clear the static, she called it. I said yes. I packed snacks. She picked the trail. We drove in near silence, save for some indie playlist she put on like ambience in a coffee shop she barely wanted to be in. I watched her watch the trees. She hummed along to a song she didn't know the lyrics to. And I kept wondering, did she feel any of it? Did she feel even an ounce of what was tearing through me? Because to me, this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was removal. She had surgically excised me from her inner life, stitched it up neatly, and carried on like I was just a memory she didn't have time to mourn. We hiked for 2 hours, ate in silence at the summit. On the way down, she reached for my hand, and I let her. Back at home, she said she was going to take a nap. I watched her disappear into our room, listened for the door to click shut. Then I grabbed the bag she had taken with her, the one she used on overnights, supposedly for work. It was already sitting by the front door, neatly zipped, like it always was the day before she left early for the airport. This time, I didn't hesitate. I unzipped it slowly and began going through every compartment like I was defusing a bomb. At first, nothing unusual. Makeup bag, toiletries, charger, receipts for gas, one for lunch at a chain restaurant she always claimed to hate. But then I found it, a folded printout. 2 pages, tucked between a change of clothes. It was a travel itinerary, printed from a website I didn't recognize. Looked like a booking confirmation, but it wasn't for a hotel. It was for a vacation rental. 2 nights. Small house. Remote town. Check-in instructions included a code for a key box mounted on the doorframe. The reservation was under her maiden name. She'd booked it for next weekend. The second page was more casual, handwritten notes in her looping, careful script. A list of what to pack. Reminders. Don't forget wine opener. Bring lighter for candles, he likes the red ones. Check the fridge, he said he might leave something there. But it was what she'd written at the very bottom, in parentheses, that made my hands go cold. Use back door, easier to avoid street view. She wasn't even trying to keep this from me anymore. She was trying to keep it from everyone. I sat down right there on the floor, the paper crumpling softly in my grip, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. She had made a decision. She'd chosen her secret life over our shared one. She was willing to lie to my face, cheat under my nose, and even spend her weekends in rented houses with the kind of intimacy I hadn't seen from her in years. But here's the part she didn't expect. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. I'd spent weeks being quiet, observing, collecting, letting her build a story she thought no one was watching. But she'd left fingerprints on every doorknob. She'd written instructions on the back. She'd built a paper trail so delicate it only took a whisper to blow it apart. I stood up and quietly folded the itinerary back into the bag, zipped it exactly as I found it, walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking anymore. She came out an hour later, yawning, stretching like she'd just woken up from a dream. I smiled. Feeling better? I asked. She nodded. That hike actually helped. I think I just needed to unplug for a while. I nodded too. Yeah, I said. Sometimes the quiet shows you things you didn't want to hear. She blinked. What? I took a sip of water and smiled again. Nothing, I said. You want to order Thai tonight? She lit up. Yes. God, yes. I'm starving. I nodded and walked over to the counter, grabbing my phone. But in the back of my head, the plan had already started forming. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because next weekend, she'd be gone. And I'd finally have the house, and time, all to myself. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet you don't realize you've missed until it settles in. No background hum of phone calls from the bedroom. No sounds of her pacing through the hallway rehearsing stories. No half-lies whispered into a Bluetooth mic when she thought I wasn't listening. Just silence. Mallory had left that morning, early. Said she was flying to Portland for a 2-day strategy intensive. She kissed me on the cheek with a soft kind of detachment, like I was a worn shirt she still liked but didn't wear anymore. I didn't kiss her back. I watched her car disappear down the street. No goodbye wave. No second glance. I stood in the living room for a long time after that, staring at the empty space where her duffel bag had been. I didn't feel angry. Not anymore. The rage had burned out somewhere between the muted messenger threads and the receipt for red candles. I just felt done. Not destroyed. Just done. And that, somehow, felt like power. Instead of sitting in it, I moved. I spent the day going room to room, gathering pieces of myself I'd forgotten existed. Old sketchbooks I hadn't touched since grad school. A telescope I used to keep by the window for stargazing. I played music I liked. Not our joint playlists, but the stuff she always rolled her eyes at. Loud. Full of color. I opened all the windows. Let the breeze in. I cooked dinner. Just for me. I even used the good plates. No more waiting for company that was never really coming. And sometime around 9 p.m. I lit a candle. Not red. Just white. Unscented. Still. Clean. It sat on the table beside me while I pulled out my laptop. I opened a blank document. And for the first time in months, I started writing again. Not code. Not emails. Not explanations. Just thoughts. And then, I wrote something that surprised even me. You can lose everything and still come back to yourself. It didn't sound poetic. It didn't even sound like something I believed fully yet. But it felt true. I slept deeply that night. No dreams. No interruptions. And in the morning, I didn't check her location. I didn't open her emails. I didn't dig for more. I didn't need to. I already knew how the story ended. When Mallory returned 2 days later, I was calm. I had boxed some of her things. Not out of anger, just so the process would be easier. I had also written a letter. No screaming. No accusations. Just the truth. That I knew. That I had known for a while. That I wasn't going to fight for someone who forgot I was even in the room. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just looked at me like I was a stranger. And maybe, in the end, that was the cleanest part of it. That we had both quietly stepped out of each other's lives long before the paperwork ever caught up. A month later, I signed a lease on a small apartment downtown. Top floor. Big windows. My telescope fits perfectly beside the balcony door. Some nights, I leave the lights off and just stare at the sky. I think a lot about silence now. Not the heavy kind that comes from betrayal, but the light kind, the free kind, the kind you get to keep when you stop chasing people who were never meant to stay.